The protests began in May after George Floyd, an African-American man, was killed at the hands of police in Minneapolis. The protests have since spread across the United States and show no sign of stopping anytime soon. Portland, Oregon has seen near daily protests, including violent clashes with police. Last weekend, a pro-Trump counter-protester was shot and killed, apparently by a pro-Antifa protester who was later killed by law enforcement as they tried to apprehend him. Protests erupted in Rochester, New York after this video was released, showing an African-American man naked, handcuffed, and hooded, passing out while being subdued by police. The coroner says he died a week later from, quote, complications of asphyxia, as well as PCP intoxication. In Washington, D.C., protesters demonstrated in front of the mayor's house after police shot an 18-year-old seen with a gun in police body cam footage. And in Kenosha, Wisconsin, protests broke out after Jacob Blake, an African-American man, was shot by police. He remains in the hospital. 2 protesters were later shot and killed. Police arrested a 17-year-old white police supporter and charged him with murder. The treatment of African Americans by police, as well as the ensuing, sometimes violent protests, have become key issues in the presidential race. Both Donald Trump and Joe Biden traveled to Kenosha, Wisconsin this week. Trump focused on calls for, quote, law and order.
Violent mobs demolished or damaged at least 25 businesses, burned down public buildings, and threw bricks at police officers, which your police officers won't stand for, and they didn't stand for it. These are not acts of peaceful protest, but really domestic terror.
Biden condemned the violence while saying he will address systemic racism in the U.S. if he wins the presidency.
Well, I think we've reached an inflection point in American history. I honest to God believe we have an enormous opportunity now that the screen, the curtain's been pulled back on just what's going on in the country, to do a lot of really positive things.
More protests and counter-protests are scheduled for this weekend and are expected to continue for months to come. Jim Spellman, CGTN, Bethesda, Maryland.